Hey guys, I was asked to do a video on how certain diseases have touched my life personally, and the two that I have chosen to do that have most affected my life are Alzheimer's disease and celiac disease. Now, as far as I know, I am not plagued by either of these. Knock on wood. Or I could just knock on my bed. Um, but I guess I'll start with Alzheimer's. Um, In 1993, a year before I was born, my grandmother, Carol, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And when I was born, she was still actually like all there. She was just like having foggy memory sometimes. And throughout my childhood, probably until I was 5, so in 1999, 6 years after my grandmother had been diagnosed, she was actually not that bad. And then in 1999, about halfway through the year, she took a turn for the worst. Um, she had been taking me out of school because I was in kindergarten at the time, and taking me out halfway through the day and walking around town with me, and then we both get lost. And um, she was just having like a bunch of health problems, and then we found out that she had bladder cancer. And the reason that she had bladder cancer is because that she was a smoker. And if you know me, you also know that I am too. Yeah, not the best thing ever. But my grandmother was a smoker, and she had worked in factories all of her life, and the factories had negative side effects on her. Um, so she had a lot of um, physical problems, needless to say. So in 2000, we decided that my grandmother was going to get put into a nursing home so that she could be better managed, because at this time both my mom and my aunt had quit their job, and my grandfather had just been diagnosed with emphysema, so he was having a hard time working, but he was still working at the time. So in yeah, so at that time, she was in a nursing home, and I won't give away the name of it, but they were abusing her. And we had gone to visit her, and she had terrible bruises all over her arms and her legs, and she had to have stitches like along her eyes. And here, one of the nurses at the nursing home was beating her because she couldn't comply with what she wanted her to do because she was losing her memory so fast. So the last time I had seen my grandmother, which this is getting me like all emotional, she was on a ventilator in another nursing home that we had transferred her to, and I didn't know this at the time. I need tissue. But she was in hospice, and it was the last time I would ever see my grandmother, and I just sat by her bed and I pet her hand, and she didn't know who I was, and her memory had gone so fast. And this was late 2000, early 2001, I think, and I was 6. Was I 6? Yeah, I was 6. And it was just really sad. I didn't know what was happening, and my grandmother, just she didn't know who I was, and she was on a ventilator, and it was just really sad. Okay, so um, shortly after that, she died of pneumonia, because what happens is that when people that have Alzheimer's, as Alzheimer's progresses in the later stages of it, they forget how to eat and swallow, so it ends up that they swallow like when they're drinking liquid. So she got put onto like a food pump and everything, and she had pneumonia really bad, and it turned out to be that her brain had been just completely vegetalized, and she had chronic pneumonia, and she just couldn't really deal with it, and she was in a lot of pain. So we decided that because of the cancer and the pneumonia and the Alzheimer's, which are all contributing factors to her death, that my mom actually decided that she was going to take her off of life support and let her pass away. So in 2001, my grandmother passed away, and I was 7 at the time. And I remember that I came home from school, and my mom sat me down on the grass and said, "Honey, your Nana died today." And I've never been right ever since, because my grandmother was actually a huge inspiration in my life, because she always told people how it was, and she just was a great woman. She really was. She worked her ass off to get places, and she was a great woman. So, the fondest memory that I have of my grandmother is of her drinking Dimetapp and vodka cocktails when I was like 4 or 5, when she was babysitting me and my sister. Not the greatest grandmother, if you think about it, but she was pretty kick ass. So, love you, Nana. It's my little shout out to her. So, that's how Alzheimer has affected my life. Now, the second is celiac disease, which is kind of funny because I had no clue that this was an actual disease up until about 4.5 years ago. Um, my boyfriend's mom actually has celiac disease, and she that means that she can't eat anything with gluten in it. So, my boyfriend was like, "Oh my god, that would really suck," and like all this stuff. And we always used to make fun of her, like, "Oh, does this have gluten in it and stuff?" And we thought that it was funny up until recently, where my boyfriend has actually been diagnosed with celiac disease, and he's lactose intolerant. And we didn't know this until recently, so it's really affecting our life right now, because we're all having to learn how to eat differently so that he can eat. So we can't eat anything with gluten in it. And if you think like, oh yeah, gluten's not in that much stuff, and you just can't eat bread. No, it's not even like that. Most cereals he can't eat. He can't eat sandwiches. He can't eat certain dressings, like all kinds of stuff. Like he just can't eat like seasonings. He can't eat a lot of seasonings, like bagels, muffins, potato chips, potatoes in themselves, just a lot. So it kind of is really sucky. Like he can't even eat oatmeal because that has gluten in it. So um, he can't eat any of that stuff, and it really makes him upset, because you have to understand, like, where, like, I live with my dad, and when we get like not in the mood to cook, we just order out like hoagies. So he can't even eat that. So it sucks. So we're learning how to readjust with that, but then with the lactose, you're like, oh, just milk. Milk isn't everything. Like, milk and gluten's in everything. So he literally can really only eat fruit and rice, and it sucks. And then they make like gluten-free food, and it's not good at all. And we used to make fun of his mom for like always eating like weird stuff, and how she would shit her pants in public. And actually, it started happening to him, and that's what happened. So, I mean, celiac disease is really affecting my life. So, I mean, it's not as drastic as Alzheimer's, which I am actually part of like the Alzheimer's walks and that kind of thing, and my grandfather's really involved in it. My mom not so much, and my sister not so much, and my aunt not so much, but me and my grandfather are actually really involved in it, because my grandmother played a huge role in both of our lives, obviously because it was his wife and my grandmother, and she was just a really great woman. So that really affects me more than celiac disease. And you don't really die from celiac disease; you die from Alzheimer's. So yeah. Um, those are the two diseases that have really affected my life. So, if you guys enjoyed this, because I kind of poured myself out to you and you kind of know more about me.